What's up, y'all? It's GC Kinsey, here to talk about being a transgender cosplayer and share some ways that cosplay has made my transition harder. A while back, I got into cosplay as Spock to talk about how cosplay made my transition easier. And now I'm here in cosplay as Red Riot to talk about the flip side, because even though cosplay helped me immensely on my gender journey, it did introduce some challenges too. A little bit of background. I've been cosplaying since 2013 and transitioning socially since 2017 and medically since 2022, so I have been a cosplayer throughout my entire transition. Wearing a beard for cosplay was what cracked my egg. Cosplay gave me a way to figure out my gender at my own pace in a safe environment. But safe doesn't necessarily mean easy, so without further ado, here are 5 ways that cosplay made my transition harder. Number 1. Cosplay gave me a convenient excuse for what else my gender feelings might be. I got started in cosplay with crossplay, or at least that's how I conceived of it at the time since I didn't yet know I wasn't a woman. The first cosplay I ever wore to a convention was Beetlejuice. Then I cosplayed the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes' plainclothes look from Civil War, Hades from Disney's Hercules, and I tried to look as masculine as possible in all of them. When I wasn't doing these masculine crossplays, I was doing drag cosplay, which I basically approached like double crossplay, meaning I wanted to look as much like a man in drag as possible. Or I was experimenting with androgynous cosplay. And I started feeling gender euphoria from having people respond to my presentation in affirming ways. But I didn't recognize it as gender euphoria for quite some time, because cosplay always gave me a convenient excuse to write off those feelings as something else. I didn't enjoy changing my appearance so much that people either assumed I was a dude or couldn't tell what gender I was because it had anything to do with my own gender feelings. Oh no, I was just proud of my shape-shifting skills. I didn't gravitate toward cosplaying male characters because I wanted to look masculine myself, not at all. I just cosplayed characters I liked who had cool costumes, and a lot of them just so happened to be men. When I had to pick between entering the men's line or the women's line for a cosplay runway show at a local con, I didn't blue screen for 30 seconds before randomly jumping in the men's line because I was having any weird gender feelings. No way. I just wanted to see if my crossplay was good enough that no one would question whether I was in the right place. And so what if I wanted to leave my beard on long after I'd taken off the rest of my costume? I worked really hard on applying that beard. Why should I let it go to waste? Bottom line, cosplay made it all too easy to look at the gender exploration I was doing and go, huh, still cis though. Without cosplay, I wouldn't have had a reason to try on these masculine forms of gender expression in the first place. But the play aspect of cosplay kept me from seeing what I was doing as a real serious form of gender questioning for much too long. So I'm glad I eventually worked my way past that and realized that I did in fact need to transition to be happy. Number 2. While I was questioning, cosplay made innocent compliments feel like loaded statements. At conventions, cosplayers and other congoers tend to strike up conversations. Maybe you chat about the fandom someone is cosplaying from, ask how they made something, or simply tell them you love their cosplay and ask for a photo. These interactions can boost a cosplayer's confidence and make the overall convention experience a lot more fun, but they can also be unexpectedly awkward when you're questioning your gender. For example, in my first couple of years of cross-playing male characters, I started noticing that people were surprised by my voice when they came up and talked to me. I guess my voice wasn't what they expected based on my appearance, and the way they reacted to that felt a little weird sometimes. Like one time an artist at a booth said, "Whoa, your voice really threw me," when I talked to them in my Beetlejuice cosplay. Another time when I was in my Winter Soldier, I asked a fellow cosplayer a question about their makeup, and when they heard my voice they went, "Oh, you're a lady," and I remember thinking, am I though? It also got awkward when people would bring gender directly into their compliments on my cosplays, like telling me how convincing my crossplays were, how I looked just like a guy, how they had no idea I was a girl from far away, etc. I had several people tell me how cool it was to see a girl cosplaying Beetlejuice or the Winter Soldier without doing a feminized version. I had a kid who couldn't tell that my beard was mascara ask me how I was able to grow it if I was really a girl. I had multiple men bemoan how unfair it was that a woman's beard was nicer than theirs. One time, pre-transition, someone saw an out-of-cosplay photo of me and started gushing about how I looked like a model when I wasn't wearing a beard. And that was confusing because I could tell they meant it as a compliment, but I was thinking, I look way hotter with a beard though. Another time, when I was cosplaying as Bucky Barnes, someone came up to me absolutely gushing over my mascara beard, wanting to touch it, saying how handsome I looked, and best of all, this person was calling me he the entire time. And I was just riding the high of gender euphoria until their friend said, "You know that's really a girl, right?" And they responded, "I know, but just let me enjoy the fantasy," which turned a great moment into a super weird one on many levels. Outside of cosplay, situations like this don't generally happen. Most strangers in public either ignore my presentation and misgender me, or ignore me altogether and don't interact. But the nature of cosplay means you're going to have friendlier than usual interactions with lots of random strangers, and if you're questioning, that can get awkward. Number 3. Cosplay has made some people see my gender as a costume. When you begin your gender journey through cosplay, at some point you're bound to run into a problem with your friends in the cosplay community, which is getting them to understand where your costume ends and your actual gender begins. And what made me realize this was an issue was when I started wearing a beard when hanging out with my friends outside of conventions, and they asked me if I was cosplaying as Bucky Barnes. I also had something strange happen at a wedding where I was wearing a suit and presenting masculine. During the reception, someone came up to me and said, "That's the best man costume I've ever seen," which, oof. Obviously, it doesn't feel good to have your gender referred to as a costume. But on top of that, this was a wedding where many of the people there, including the bride and groom, were cosplayers, but the person who said this to me was someone I'd never met before, and I don't know if they were a cosplayer or they knew of me in a cosplay context or not. And the fact that they said man costume generically, like not even asking if I was cosplaying a specific male character, felt even worse. Because that left no room for doubt that they saw the gender I was trying so hard to express as nothing more than a surface-level aesthetic. And they thought my real gender was the baggage I had been assigned at birth and was trying so hard to escape. And that absolutely sucked. Another facet of this issue is that before I started transitioning or even questioning, a lot of people at cons would automatically call me he based on my cosplays alone. But once I started actually asking for he/him pronouns and wearing a pronoun pin, it was like pulling teeth to get people to remember. But I think the strangest way this issue manifested was when I started testosterone. Since I got on T in the summer of 2022, I've had several people go, "Oh, you're transitioning now?" or ask what they should call me, as if my transition hasn't been going on since 2017. Maybe those people didn't realize I was transitioning until I started hormones because they thought I was just crossplaying the entire time. Or maybe it speaks to the wider misconception that medical transition is the only real transition. I don't know. But I can't help but think that cosplay has something to do with it in my case. Like people saw my gender as just a costume until I started hormones. Number 4. Cosplay gets me misgendered via degendering at cons. If you've spent any time in trans circles, you're probably familiar with the practice of cutting down on misgendering by referring to everyone with gender-neutral language until you know what language they use and then using that language going forward. And because comic and anime conventions tend to attract a lot of trans attendees and are generally trans-friendly spaces, many people there are familiar with that practice. Except for some reason, they tend to only follow the first part. Like, they use gender-neutral language for everyone, and then stop there. Which I found out when I started wearing pronoun accessories to cons. In fact, this practice is why I started wearing pronoun accessories to cons. In addition to helping my friends adjust when I made the switch to he/him, it also let every other con goer know what to call me instead of they/them. I may be non-binary, but I don't use they them pronouns, and being called they really doesn't feel any better than being called she. So I thought, I'll just wear a he him pronoun pin and problem solved. Except it didn't work. I get misgendered via degendering at cons on a consistent basis. And it's such a weirdly frustrating thing because even though it obviously stems from an effort to be trans-friendly, the end result is that the pronouns I'm wearing on my person get ignored just as much at cons as they do out in the rest of the world, even when I say something. And what's extra mind-boggling is how I've noticed that a lot of the people who misgender me via degendering at cons are wearing pronoun pins too, so those people should really know better. Maybe the assumption is that you can't misgender someone by using they them pronouns, but that's simply not true, and I say that as a non-binary person. I want to make it clear that when I talk about misgendering at cons, I don't mean my close friends. They obviously do gender me correctly. I'm talking about acquaintances or random strangers who stop to talk to me about my cosplay, who then introduce me to their friends or shout me out on social media while referring to me with they them pronouns. So if you're a trans cosplayer, or heck, even a cis cosplayer who doesn't use they them pronouns, oh well, be prepared to get misgendered via degendering at cons no matter what you do. Number 5. Cosplay has shown me how transphobic some parents can be. In addition to cosplaying at cons, I've also volunteered in cosplay at charity events. These are usually some kind of benefit for kids, children's hospital visits, fundraisers for kids who need expensive medical care, etc. The last charity event I did was a holiday dinner party for low-income children and their families. They asked for Disney characters and superheroes to help entertain the kids, so I volunteered as Bucky Barnes in his Infinity War costume. And at one point, this little kid who couldn't have been older than 3 came up for a vibranium high five and wanted a picture. And the parents stepped in like, no, and started pulling the kid away. The kid's still going, but I want a picture, and the parents just shoot me this weird, dirty look and tell the kid, no you don't, that's a girl. Now, I can't break character and call them out on their transphobia. I can't report them to anyone because they're not working the event, they're attending it as beneficiaries. The only thing I can do in that moment is try to hold it together and pretend that everything's fine. But obviously, nothing about this is fine. The dysphoria alone is bad enough, but seeing first-hand evidence like that of just how transphobic parents can be is an absolute gut punch. That wasn't the first time I dealt with parents being transphobic. I'd seen some parents give me weird looks or side-eye when I was cosplaying at cons or other charity events, and their kids came up for a high five or a photo. But I'd never seen any parents pull their children away or say something transphobic out loud until that event. And I'd be lying if I said that wasn't part of the reason why I haven't returned to cosplay charities since the pandemic started. Obviously, the main reason is because it's difficult to make events like that safe for either the beneficiaries or the volunteers. But transphobia is a factor as well. In the US, where I live, things have gotten weird for trans people when children are involved. There's a lot of "we must protect the children" and "trans people are groomers" rhetoric. And I no longer feel safe as an openly trans person volunteering at events that benefit kids where I might have to deal with transphobia from their parents. It's difficult to say what's worse, being subjected to transphobic treatment from parents or knowing their kids are going to grow up in a transphobic household. Either way, it's heartbreaking. But I can only hope that if those kids maintain an interest in cosplay, cons will one day give them a place to escape from and unlearn their parents' transphobia. So there you have it. 5 ways that cosplay made my transition harder. And I want to close by saying that even though this video focused on the challenges of being a trans cosplayer, cosplay was absolutely a net positive for my transition. Without cosplay, I wouldn't have met most of my chosen family, and my egg might still be uncracked. So if you're looking for a supportive environment for exploring your gender, I highly encourage you to give cosplay a shot. Despite the challenges you might face, you never know just how much cosplay might help. And with that, now is where I want to turn the conversation over to you. If you're a trans cosplayer, what has that experience been like? Have you faced similar challenges to the ones I've discussed here, or different ones? If there's anything you could change about the cosplay community to make it better for trans people, what would it be? And whether you're trans or not, whether you're a cosplayer or not, what questions do you have about all this? Drop a comment below and let's get a discussion going. You can also reach out to me on other social media. I'm GC Kinsey across all platforms. And while you're here, feel free to check out some of my other videos. I've got more vlogs like this one about my experiences as a queer person, along with cosplay music videos, makeup tutorials, a bunch of cool resources for singers about voice changes on testosterone, and more right here on this channel. So make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything new. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all of your support. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you on the next one.